Today on the Tristen Law Show, we're switching from miles to kilometers because we're going to Canada. However, there's a problem, and we're going to learn about this problem from Canadian independent pro wrestler Jeremy Prophet, and that's today on the Tristen Law Show. Welcome to the Tristen Law Show, where I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. The unique part is you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy this podcast. If it is your first time here, new episodes drop on Wednesdays, and welcome. I'm your host, Tristen Law, and I'm glad that you're here for episode 3131, featuring another personality in and out of the pro wrestling ring. A few weeks ago, I wanted to interview Canadian pro wrestlers because you and most of the other people who listen to this podcast, the Tristen Law Show, are American, or pretty much you don't live in Canada. Doing my search of pro wrestlers from Canada and pro wrestlers who were pretty much not from the United States, I met Jeremy Prophet on Twitter, and he jumped at the opportunity to chat with me, and I jumped at the opportunity to chat with him. This interview that you're going to hear today between myself and Jeremy Prophet, it's going to be super cool because we're going to talk about how WWE Hall of Famer, the right-hand man to Vince McMahon, and the late and great Pat Patterson pointed him towards an opportunity with the WWE. We're going to talk about a match that he had with WWE Superstar Jinder Mahal. We're going to talk about why Jeremy felt like he didn't fit in to the WWE. And, of course, we're going to definitely get down to the big problem in Canada that we've talked about since the last episode. Speaking of future episodes, I'm recording in a couple weeks a special episode for WrestleMania surrounding the top 5 WrestleManias of the last decade, and I need your help. Vote at TristenLawShow.com, and you'll be able to find the link in the description of this episode. Remember, your vote matters because, hey, you're the family. Why not? Up next on the Tristen Law Show is Jeremy Prophet. I am Tristen Law, and this is the Tristen Law Show.
Hello to all of you Tristen Law Show podcast listeners, this is Frank Mandolini. You may not recognize this voice. I am the Italian podcaster who talks about the business side of wrestling. Yeah, I know, it's quite niche, but if you look for last minute wrestling podcast on all of your social media and wherever you get your podcast, you've been amazed to find interviews with people such as Rob Van Dam or Matthew Gregg from Botchamania and many others, so you get to know many aspects of the wrestling business that normally you don't hear in wrestling podcasts. Because let's face it, who wants to hear another guy talk about Monday Night Raw? Yeah, me neither. So guys, go to lmwpodcast.com or search for LMW Podcast everywhere in the interweb. And remember guys, this is Frank Mandolini from the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast, and you stay safe.
Welcome back to the Tristen Law Show, and I hope that you're having a great time. My next guest at this time is a top-tier Canadian professional wrestler. He's the main villain of the PCO Justice web series, and he wants you to know that he's an all-around great human being. I'd like to welcome Jeremy Prophet to the Tristen Law Show. Jeremy, welcome. How are you, my friend?
My man, Tristen, I am so glad to be here, as I am anytime I get to come on one of these shows, connect with a new audience, and connect with such a fantastic host like yourself. So I am raring to go. Any kind of questions you got for me, I'm happy to hear them, and let's hope we can have some fun here tonight.
Well, we definitely will have some fun. You know, it's all about fun and the listeners learning about the personality behind the personality. And I do want to say Canada is one of my favorite countries to visit because I have family there. Shout out to my sister Karen, her husband Joel, and my nieces Mackenzie and Madison, who's on the way. So I love Canada. I love the culture. When I go to Canada, bro, all I want to do is eat, because I like to experience the culture that I can't in America. However, one of the things I learned about you is that you are fighting for Canadians. What does that mean?
Pretty much that's been my crusade since this whole quarantine started. What not a lot of people know out there is there are tons of tremendously talented Canadians grinding and hustling day in, day out. And you guys have probably never heard about them, not because they're not good, but because we don't get the same opportunities. We don't have a level playing field like it is in the United States. The way I see it, and I mean, it's my subjective view when it comes to talent. You know, you can look at any wrestler and say, he's good, he's not good. You can show a wrestler to 10 random people. You know, half of them might say he's good, half of them might say he's terrible. Good is subjective. But we're talking about opportunities. We're talking about people with talent. And I feel that Canada has wrestlers that are equally at very worst, but oftentimes far more talented, but not getting the opportunities. You know, I include myself in that category, but I always say I'm the run to the litter. This ain't about me. So, you know, you may not like the messenger. I really don't care because the message is what's important. So when it comes down to it, in the United States, you guys have a lot of opportunities. All the major companies, let's face it, aside from maybe New Japan, all the major companies operate in the United States. We're talking WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, MLW, Impact Wrestling, and I can go on and on. All the top tier companies. Now, in Canada, I think I probably wrestle for one of the top companies in Great North Wrestling, as well as IWS. Two fantastic companies. I've done all there is to do around here. Won championships multiple times. 3-time Canadian champion in Great North Wrestling, 2-time IWS champion. I think I've amassed something like well over maybe 50 championships once it's all said and done. We know the championship gold really, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that much. It just means that, you know, the promoter is entrusting you to be on the top of the marquee.
Right.
All that to say, you know, the opportunities, they don't just get handed to us. We don't get to face so-called top-level independent talent on a regular basis, and we certainly don't get to rub shoulders with them on a regular basis when we're in the locker rooms, which I've come to the conclusion that something in wrestling that has been forever ingrained into it is it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how hard you work if nobody knows who you are. So it's the fact that the exposure is not there, you know? And I mean, I could break it down real simple, and I'm sure people are going to say, well, there's a lot of different ways people make it. But the fact is, there are a lot of independent promotions in the United States that if you perform for them on a regular basis,
True.
You are going to get seen by the right people.
Right, you're going to be on somebody's radar.
Yeah, we're talking places like PWG, like GCW, you know, I can go on and on, CZW, Evolve, you know, I could name tons of them. And you work for those places, you're on the fast track to getting somewhere where you can make a comfortable living doing this sport that we all love. So it's not as easy for us in Canada because, yeah, we're willing to put in the work. We're willing to put in the time on the road, but we can't because we have this gigantic obstacle in front of us called the border.
Yeah.
So what people don't realize, they think, oh, well, we don't see a lot of Canadians on shows. And I feel like a lot of times, and I take this a bit personally, I feel like a lot of times the judgment is, well, they're just not as good. If they were good, they'd be getting booked. They'd be getting looked at. But the fact is, if you're any one of those promotions I named and you want to bring in, let's say, Jeremy Prophet, I can't just go to the border and say, hey, I'm going to go wrestle for, you know, for Evolve or for PWG. It don't work that way. They're going to turn you away. They're going to look for any kind of an excuse to deny you. And it's the equivalent of going to work illegally. You know, people associate that with, you know, people are coming through from Mexico with, you know, to work in the agriculture industry and they're coming by illegally, coyotes, whatever you want to call it. But a wrestler out of Canada going to perform in the United States, which, you know, you being in New York, you and I maybe got 5 hours of road separating us.
Yeah, from here to Quebec, yeah.
Yeah, like I literally live about half an hour from the border into Plattsburgh, New York. So if I want to go do a show there 30 minutes from my house, I can't do that without a work visa. What people don't realize is to acquire a work visa, you need to have first the endorsement of a wrestling promotion. So they have to ask the American government, hey, can we get this guy approved? From there, the visa that you need, you have to show that you are an exceptionally talented athlete, more talented than someone in the United States who could do the same job. So you need to show them magazine articles. You need to show them all kinds of burdens of proof that you really are this talented and that you'll have a low impact on the labor force of the United States. From there, you have to also apply for it, which there's a fee for that. If I'm not mistaken, a couple of $1,000s. It has to go through a 3-step approval phase. So you have to get it through 3 steps where they could deny it at any time, and they don't return your money if they do that.
Oh, wow.
So
it's a gamble.
Oftentimes, you're facing about a payment of maybe $7 to $10 grand. Now, I'll be realistic. I think I've heard between $3 to $10 grand, but you always have legal fees, lawyer fees, those kinds of things that go along. So we're looking in that ballpark of $3 to $10 grand. To me, I would say this, if it were as simple as just throwing money at this problem, I would have done it a long time ago. I'd be willing to invest 10 grand in my career to go perform in the United States for people like you. I will go on record of saying that. If any company wants to call my bluff, you're more than welcome to. It'll be a dream come true. You know why? Because in life, education is not always free, unless you're maybe in a Scandinavian country or a communist country. Education is not free. And so to me, an investment of that magnitude is a teardrop in the ocean to be able to further my skills and get closer towards my profession. I look at it as an investment in my education in wrestling.
I just recently started reaching out to professional wrestlers who are in Canada. I said, you know what? Looking at my demographic is huge in the Northeast region, in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, that little area there. So, you know what? Let me go talk to some Canadian brethren and sisters. You were one of the first ones that reached out to me because of a tweet. So if there's anything that I can do by utilizing my platform to help bolster the Canadian wrestlers, I would love to do that. I have a Canadian listener, Vanessa from Ontario. She listens to this as well too. So, it'd be great, if she can now hear her countrymen and women on an American podcaster. So I appreciate you coming here and explaining the struggles for Canadian professional wrestlers or Canadian entertainers, period.
I hate to speak ill of my fellow countrymen, but in a lot of ways, this is like a call to action. A lot of them, they kind of want to be ho-hum, polite. That's the Canadian way. But let's face it, you got to crack a few eggs if you want to make an omelet. You got to make noise if you want to be heard. And maybe some people aren't as proactive when it comes to this kind of thing, but I definitely am. And I'm telling you, day after day, there's nothing that's on my mind other than we need to make this right. We need to be heard. I think a lot of people are maybe scared to talk about it because in this business, so many people walk on eggshells. They don't want to have heat. But like I said, you can never please everybody. You got to break some eggs to make omelets. And, the more I make noise about this, the more I'm getting heard. And I've talked directly to, for example, on the next episode that we have coming out of Jofo Podcast, we have Tyson Kidd. I've known him for a long time, brought it to his attention. He's an on-air, not an on-air, but he's an agent with WWE. And so I brought it to his attention because he knows the struggle. He worked the independents. He doesn't have an American parent or any kind of, privilege when it comes to that. He knows what it's like. I mean, I worked the independents too years ago when things weren't as strict and, never made a dollar doing it. But in the year and a half I did it, easily got more exposure than all the years previous. So, I mean, I've taken it to TJ Wilson. I've taken it to people in other companies. And one of the things I find interesting is that you look at the amount of Canadian wrestlers in top companies. Right. So WWE, they've been hiring, tons of Canadians over the years. They've been pretty good with it. There was a time WWE was the only game in town. So really, it was a level playing field. And their hiring practices were a little bit different because before, you could be hired anytime, any place. You didn't have to do any kind of a performance center tryout, that kind of thing. When I had my tryouts with WWE, it's just, you show up at TV, they might see something they like, or you can contact them. Maybe they send you down to Florida, look at you in a wrestling capacity, and they could hire you. That was equal opportunity. They didn't discriminate if you're Canadian, you're American, you're Chinese, you could be from anywhere. They'll take a look at you. Things kind of change where now the protocol becomes, we take a look at guys at TV who come in as extras. Then we decide if we're going to send them to NXT to do a week-long tryout, to do a lot of CrossFit drills, some wrestling drills. Bottom line, they want to see if they pretty much know who everyone is, but they want to see if you have the heart to continue. They want to see if they can break you, and rightfully so, because it's tough being on the road. Not everyone's built for that for 5 days a week, True. All year long.
True.
the thing is that inadvertently ended up discriminating against Canada. I say that because when I wrestled in Boston, Massachusetts, I wrestled for a number of companies in Massachusetts, in Maine, through a lot of the New England states. And those guys would blow my mind when they would tell me, yeah, we got shows here for WWE. I've been an extra 5-6 times this year. So this guy's getting 5-6 looks in a year. Guy or girl, I should say.
Right.
Getting 5-6 looks in a year. In my career, I've done this at this point where I'm meeting these people for about 8 years. In 8 years, I had 4 TV trials over the course of 8 years, less than what these guys get in 1 calendar year. So how is a Canadian supposed to catch the attention when we maybe get 1 shot? And let's not forget, they usually only invite a handful of extras. So
right.
It's not like it's a big cattle call. It's really pick and choose here and there. Maybe we see something, maybe we don't. But we're not getting 5-6 chances a year. We're lucky if we get 1. It's not like it's a revolving door of opportunity. That's just one company. I look at some other companies, for example, like Impact, and I can't be too hard on them because at least, even though they don't have too many Canadians, it's not as though the company is inundated with people from other countries. So it seems, especially right now with COVID, like they're really restricted to just people who won't have issues coming in from other countries, that kind of thing. But when I look at a company like MLW or a company like Ring of Honor, these companies, they have people from Mexico, Australia, the UK, but where are the Canadians? Do you know, and again, maybe you follow those companies very closely, in both Ring of Honor and MLW, how many Canadians do you think they have on their roster?
I'm going to guess, and I'm going to say 4.
MLW doesn't have 1 Canadian wrestler. They have Alicia, too, who's an interviewer. She's from Toronto, not a wrestler. Ring of Honor, they have 2. Angelina Love, who's pretty much Americanized at this point, was married to an American, had done WWE before. I'm sure, work visa, all that stuff was already taken care of, already in the bag at that time. And PCO, who I know very well, who I work with on a weekly basis on his show, PCO Justice, somewhat of a mentor to me. And that's it when it comes to Canadians. Ring of Honor has a TV show that airs on French television here in Montreal, here in Quebec, in the province that I'm from, with only 1 Canadian on the show. Now you look at their roster, Mexicans, British, UK, Australians. It's a nice multicultural rainbow of talent. Why only 1 Canadian when we are statistically closer to their headquarters in Baltimore than a lot of those places? That we, in Montreal, Quebec, closer to Baltimore than talent that comes from California, talent that comes from the Midwest, talent that comes from Texas, Florida. We're closer. So why is there this drought of Canadian talent? Like I said, if it was a problem where I could just throw money at it, I'd have done it a long time ago.
Right.
But it doesn't work that way. We need one of those big companies to do that. And it blows my mind because I say every other professional sport, they have scouting. I'm a big hockey fan. I love the Montreal Canadiens. The New York Rangers, y'all ain't bad. But you got the number 1 draft pick. You got Lafreniere, number 1 draft pick. So, good on you guys. But in hockey, for example, they'll scout the Czech Republic. They'll scout Russia. They'll scout Scandinavia, all these places to find the best players to say, hey, you know what? We want to build the best team. Let's scout the best. Why are all these companies so oblivious to Canada? Don't they want to be the best? Doesn't AEW want to pass WWE? Doesn't Ring of Honor want to pass AEW or WWE? Why aren't they looking to Canada? WWE, for example, they got NXT UK because they realized, hey, there's a lot of great talent over in the UK. Let's start getting these guys in, put them in our, let's call it their AA system, which is NXT UK, get them into their AAA system, which is NXT, and then get them ready for the big leagues. Let's put our stamp on them. Let's funnel them in.
Right.
So now it's easy for all of Europe to be scouted and seen over there with NXT UK. But Canada, which is much closer to Stamford, Connecticut, much closer to Orlando, Florida, they're not looking at our independent scenes. And I can tell you, I've been a top guy here for years. We have tons of other guys. I'm the run to the litter, man. Like, there are tons of other guys plying their craft refining their grind, perfecting their hustle, but they're not being looked at. This is what I eat, breathe, and sleep every single day. It's just not fair. And recently there was a wrestler, not even worth naming, someone out of SoCal who commented that I'm being a bit of a victim here in talking about this. And they say find a way, work harder. And it's like, we're not playing by the same rules. It's like, work harder. Imagine back in the day saying that to someone who wanted to work their way out of slavery. Work harder.
Yeah.
When you don't have the same set of rules, it doesn't apply. So it's my job to get that out there. People say, oh, you're complaining. Oh, you're complaining. Why are you talking? Why are you saying these kinds of things? Just, shut your mouth and work harder. And it's like, I'm not trying to say I'm a victim here, but I mean, would you talk to someone, part of the speaking out movement, and when they're trying to bring something to light that people don't know about, and you're going to tell them, oh, you shouldn't be making yourself into a victim here. Look, there are things about the wrestling business that need to change. And it doesn't change until people start standing up and actually doing something to change it. So, I got thick skin, I got broad shoulders, I can bear the brunt of this, and I'm going to keep doing it whether people want to get on board or not. But the more I keep doing this, the more people are listening. And believe me, I've gotten through to a lot of people. There is going to be change. There needs to be change because it's gone on for way too damn long.
I want to set a call to action out there right now. If you are a Canadian professional wrestler, or if you are a personality in and out of the professional wrestling ring, and you're not based in America, reach out to me, and I would love to have you on the podcast, on the Tristen Law Show. Jeremy, to switch gears, you mentioned that you are a part of the PCO Justice web series, and I mentioned that in your intro as well, too. You're the main villain on that web series, which can be found on YouTube. Explain to those listening who may not know what the web series PCO Justice is.
For those of you who know PCO, that's already a plus because you see what he does in the ring. Man is a living monster. He is the most indestructible human being I've ever met. And so this has been turned into kind of like a TV series, a web series, if you will. So every week you see PCO as a superhero fighting crime, fighting for justice. And I've been fortunate to have been cast as a part of that, to be sort of the opposition to him, the bad guy. And it was something that just kind of started as a one-off, and the episode did really good ratings. And so they made some future plans for me, and it's really been a blast. I mean, we get to work like wrestling, but with a bit of a twist because we have special effects, we have choreography, and it's really just something that's shown a lot of the other side of PCO and myself, the more thespian side of doing things. And I think it's a lot of fun. And I kind of look at that as like one of my demo reels, to show you've seen Jeremy Prophet, the wrestler. Now you can see Jeremy Prophet, the actor. You can see a different side of me because obviously I'm playing a character. I'm not playing myself. But and in wrestling, I will say that it's more like Jeremy Prophet is me, just with the volume turned up to 1 million. But on there, I get to do something a little bit different and use some of the skills I got from wrestling, but also learn some new skills too. And working with PCO is fantastic. I mean, when I say he's the most indestructible human being, you have no idea. Even in the filming, the stuff that we do, the stunts, it's really unbelievable. And I always feel like anytime I'm on a show like this, it gives me a chance. This is kind of like my mixtape, giving the people a feel for what you get with Jeremy Prophet. I'm not your typical independent wrestler. In my mind, I'm a professional at all times. And it gives me a chance to show that to people and to show my value. And with PCO Justice, like I said, it's another different facet of what I bring to the table. But it's also a way to show a company, any company out there that, hey, this is what I'm capable of. If you want to cast me in this role, I'm all for it. And, I personally think Ring of Honor, if they don't do something, it's leaving a bit of money on the table because I think PCO and I in a ring, in a match, bringing the same kind of magic like we do on a screen every week could be a real treat for the fans, especially now that there are no fans. It gives us a little bit more freedom to do something really creative. And I think that I'd make a great anti-hero to him. And not only that, but I think I could have fantastic matches with tons of guys there who I've already wrestled. You can see a fantastic match that's aged really well between myself and Matt Taven online. You can find that on YouTube. I've wrestled other guys there. Jay Lethal, one of my best matches of my career I've had with Jay Lethal. I've had matches with Vincent, one of the first guys I got the chance to really work with and sink my teeth into in a program in the United States. He's doing really well now too. And the more I watch the show, I see people popping up all the time. I'm like, yeah, I worked with that guy. I've worked with that guy.
Right.
Had a banger of a match with Dan Housen, who's really caught fire and comes up to train here with us in Montreal pretty often. And so those guys already know who I am, and I think I would fit like a glove in that company and definitely bring something a little bit different to the table. So I think that PCO Justice, to me, I hope it will work as a good demo reel to show them a bit of my potential that they could have exclusively in their ring.
So let's go into the Wayback Machine, and we're going to go all the way back. And what everybody likes to know, and what I want to know, is what is your earliest memory of pro wrestling?
The first time I ever saw pro wrestling was a match between Bret the Hitman Hart and Blake Beverly. And I saw it, didn't know what wrestling was, but couldn't take my eyes off it. And I was hooked ever since. As cliche as it sounds, to me, it was just like, I want to do that. And I knew I would find my way. I actually thought that my only path being Canadian would be to go to the Hart Dungeon, because that's all I knew about was the Harts. And obviously Bret, big fan of Bret. He was my favorite wrestler from the time I started watching wrestling. So I thought, why not, head out there, get trained by the same people. Maybe I could have a good run at this and be as good as Bret. In a lot of ways, I kind of feel like I've always been just trying my best to be Bret when I'm in there and to get the most out of my opponents. I hear interviews that Bret does, and a lot of what he says, it makes a lot of sense. Like when like the Bret Hart scale, it's one of my favorite things to talk about, where he appraises a wrestler on 3 aspects: on their promo, their mic skills, their appearance, and their wrestling. And he uses the famous example of Hulk Hogan, where he says a guy like Hulk Hogan, look-wise, 10 on 10. Promo skills, 10 on 10. Wrestling, I think he gives him like maybe a 4 or a 5. So that's always been my outlook on wrestling, is I want to be someone who is as close to a 10 right across the board. I want to be someone who you can put on a microphone and he's not going to be boring. He's going to give you a hell of a promo. He's going to, rip into that opponent. And I wish I had more of an opportunity to go at it with people on the mic. As I always say, nobody calls me out, but, I'd love for that to happen, because I really feel, I can do some serious damage on a microphone. I am confident in my speaking ability. And it's one of the hardest things, is to sit back and see such great talent and be like, man, I know I could cut a sick promo on that guy. That guy's got some great mic skills. He could probably give it right back. And I feel it's kind of been lacking in the wrestling business. I watch Monday Night Raw, I watch SmackDown. Guys can't handle the mic as well anymore. The Attitude Era, far gone. Now we got the scripted promo era. We got guys who are, it's almost like they're scared to cut promos. I see guys on the independents. Promoter tells them, hey, you got a promo tonight. I see them cower away. They're all scared. Me, it's like, bring it on.
Give me
Bring
the
it on. You want me to talk
microphone.
for an hour?
That's all I say is give me the microphone. But you want me to cut a promo? No problem, because I want to fire somebody up so much that we are going to fight in the parking lot.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what we're doing. We are giving the people a fight. They pay to see violence. I always say that's some of the best advice I got. Abdullah the Butcher said that, and it was so simple. Just give the people violence. Make sure you're not bored. In Canada, I'm the most well-rounded performer, because I have yet to meet someone who is as good as me in all the things I'm good at. I've yet to see that person who can cut that sick promo, who's in great shape, who can go in the ring, in the air, on the mat, bring the intensity and the believable violence to a match. I've yet to see that person. And obviously the storytelling and psychology. I've yet to meet that person. I'd love to interview that person one day, especially here in Canada. Never met him. Not to say I'm braggadocious, but I'm confident in what I do, because I work hard to be good at all those things. If I see someone do something, no matter what it is, it could be physical, it could be spoken, it could be anything like that, it could be verbal. I'll say to myself, I got to dig deep and be better than that, because this is what people want to see. So the 3 aspects, the look, the promo, and the wrestling, I try to be as good as possible in all of those. So when you look at me, you can say, hey, you know what? He's got all the tools. A lot of guys call themselves a total package, the 5-tool player. I would never call myself that, because that legacy has been stained and tainted by so many people who, it's funny, but when you call yourself a 5-tool player, oftentimes the main tool you're missing is the actual wrestling, the actual bread and butter, meat and potatoes of what you do. So I would never label myself like that. All I say is look at all of my skills, look at the entire package, and appraise that versus anyone.
So when did you realize, because you were talking about how you liked Bret Hart and your first match between Bret Hart and Blake Beverly of the Beverly Brothers, when did you realize that you were hooked to pro wrestling?
Oh, right away. It was watched that week. I never stopped watching. I still watch as much wrestling as I can. I mean, my life is wrestling. It's I know some people, they turn it on, they turn it off. You know, they have the day job and they have their weekend fun and those kinds of things. My fun is wrestling. I just want to be as immersed in it as possible. So I try to watch as much as possible. I try to watch as much different wrestling as possible too. And it's like I tell people, even if you watch something and it bores you or you don't like it, you can still learn. You can watch backyard wrestling and you can learn. At the very least, you can learn what not to do.
Yeah.
But you got to stay current and know what's going on out there to know how you can differentiate yourself. I love wrestling. If I could wrestle every day, mark my words, I would wrestle every single freaking day. That's how much I love this business. And, I did tours in Canada here. I did these death tours that they call them up in the north of Canada where you're driving across frozen lakes, not knowing if your ring truck is going to crack the ice and everyone's going to go down. You got to take your seatbelt off and have the door open because there's that much risk. And you're wrestling every day. And if you're not wrestling, you're traveling probably about a day's worth of a drive because you got to go 30 kilometers, which is how our vehicles are. That's probably about, maybe 10 or 12 miles for you guys. Because if you go any faster, you might end up hitting a deer or a moose or hitting a ditch. And then you can't go too slow because you might end up getting stuck in the snow. And I loved every minute of it. And I really say that separates the men from the boys. You can survive that. Everything else is cushy. But I've done 30-day tours. I did one for Emile Dupree, the father of Rene Dupree. 30 shows, 30 days. No days off. And came out of it unfazed. Moonsaults, 450 splashes every night, literally every night. Came out of it unscathed. I feel I'm built for this, physically and mentally. And I feel like, I'm a top tier talent that's just waiting to be discovered, not sitting on my laurels, working every day. And I like to say I'm ready yesterday. That call should have came yesterday, but I'm ready yesterday for whatever today may throw at me. I don't need to go, tan and do push-ups and get into shape. I don't need to get into shape. I stay in shape.
Right.
That's me.
So the death trips sound scary, but I'm sure that they're fun and that there's stories that you can tell along with those. But before all the death shows and before the matches and, the 30-day shows, what was the moment that you decided to yourself that you wanted to go to pro wrestling school? At the request of my family, education came first.
Education always had to come first. And I continued my education even into my wrestling training. So that was the first step, but it was always my goal, graduate from high school, become a wrestler. And I thought for sure I'm moving out west. I'm moving to Calgary, which if people don't know the geography of Canada, Calgary by car probably would take me about 3 or 4 days to get there from where I am. But that's how determined I was. Lo and behold, one of my good friends, his younger brother, was learning to be a wrestler at Jacques Rougeau's wrestling school. That's the Mountie, for those of you who don't know. Mm-hmm. And pretty much he invited me to come try out a class. I jumped at the opportunity right away. So he told me this like on a Friday when we were just celebrating graduation over at my buddy's house. I was there the next day. Day's notice. Showed up. Actually went out and bought myself a pair of wrestling shoes, of Asics wrestling shoes that night because I thought that that's what you need to have. Those are, amateur wrestling shoes, but I thought that that's what you need to have. Bought myself some knee pads and jumped right into it. Got in the ring, took my first bump, ran the ropes. This is what I wanted to do. This wasn't I'm going to dip my toes in the water and see if it's, nice and warm. I'm jumping in head first and never looked back, man. That was one of the greatest things, the greatest feelings, to finally be inside of a wrestling ring. And from there, you could say I was a quick learner. I like to think I was. So from there, that would have been in December of 2003. So almost 2004. My first match was in April of 2004. So that was like 4 months later. I was already in the ring. Had a couple of matches after that because with Jacques Rougeau's wrestling school, he was putting on shows and we weren't venturing out to other independents as of yet. But I managed to get about 5 matches under my belt within a year's time, still training every week. And after a while, I decided I'm going to venture out into the independent scene. And I want to wrestle as much as possible. It wasn't about the money. It was just about being in there, getting experience, taking step after step to get to that next level. So in June or July of 2005, I decided that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take as many bookings as I can. And I haven't had a break ever since. So that's why I consider that my debut. 15 years straight, no breaks, no injuries. And I think lots of good things to come.
That's pretty amazing. 15 years straight, never taking a break. And that shows how dedicated that you were as well, too, that right after high school that you were going to become a professional wrestler. And you did that and did college at the same exact time. Like, a lot of people don't understand, like, going to professional wrestling school, aside from the military, because I've never been in the military, I think pro wrestling is the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. Like, I went to go be a correction officer. I was there for a couple weeks, and that was easy. You know, I left for, other reasons. But becoming a professional wrestler, going to the school, learning how to bump, how to throw yourself around, get up, think, breathe, and be where you need to be when you're supposed to be there, it's super difficult. And it's a skill that once you learn it and you master it, you can take it and do anything with it. Jeremy, I understand that you also tried out for the WWE. How did you get those opportunities?
Well, when it comes to the WWE, it was something that I always wanted. Up until maybe only a few years back, WWE was my ultimate goal. I didn't have my eyes set on any other company. Honestly, turned down a couple of opportunities here and there that I now look back on and said, hey, maybe that would have been a better fit for me. But at the time, I was tunnel vision. It was WWE. Nothing else mattered. Literally nothing else. You can kind of see by how I tell my stories. I'm a very focused individual. I put my blinders on. Nothing else matters, just the goal. We didn't have any real veterans here in Quebec. We had, obviously, Jacques Rougeau, who trained me, PCO, who was semi-active at the time, and Sylvain Grenier, who was one half of La Resistance. He got released from WWE. We happened to find ourselves on a show together. And I remember it like it was yesterday. Now, I had a tremendous respect for Sylvain. I had met him a couple of times before, but just, met him as an aspiring wrestler, not aspiring wrestler, but met him as a starting to wrestle, and he was in WWE, that kind of thing. But we were on the same show together. And he made a speech in the locker room where he said, guys, I'm opening a wrestling school. And you might not know this, but Sylvain is he can sometimes rub people the wrong way. Right. I often say a lot of my heel persona is inspired by the real life Sylvain Grenier. So he makes this speech to the locker room and he's like, guys, I'm opening my wrestling school this Tuesday. And I expect you all to be there because let's face it, guys, you guys need it. You guys really need it badly. That was the speech he made to the locker room. They laughed at him. They got mad. Guys were like, how could you say that? How could you say we need it? I was the only one that walked up to him and I said, Sylvain, I'm going to be there Tuesday. And he's like, this is the smartest move you could have made because, hey, I'm the only guy in here that's got John Laurinaitis' cell phone number. So I said, this is a path. We now have a path. We have someone who's been there, so now they can help to get us there. I showed up at his school, fully expecting to rejoin a wrestling school now after, a solid 4 or 5 years in the business. I showed up. He made me the trainer for the new students while he handled the advanced ones. Never asked me for $1. And so, I think that started a really good relationship between he and I. And, I kept telling him, my goal is WWE, my goal is WWE. And he said, I'm going to show you the skills. I'm going to show you what they look for. So he polished me. He gave me that fine tuning to now learn the WWE stuff, to learn positioning, working the cameras, the right techniques that they're teaching to their guys in developmental. He was trained by Rocky Johnson and then further trained by Tom Pritchard. So in a lot of ways, same people that trained The Rock. So that was great because I love The Rock. Rock's one of my biggest inspirations. We're working a show on Father's Day and he brings Pat Patterson to the show. They have a good almost father-son relationship.
Right.
Pat, God rest his soul, who passed recently. But Pat Patterson was there. And all the guys are suddenly up in arms. They're like, oh my God, Pat Patterson's there. All the wrestlers. They're like, we got to pull out all these crazy spots. We got to do something to impress Pat. Everyone's in, we got to impress Pat mode. Now, the reason Pat Patterson was there was because there was another wrestler, a 7-foot giant, that Sylvain wanted him to take a look at and put in a word with WWE. So I know Pat is not there to see, these curtain jerkers wrestling in running shoes and gym shorts. He's there to see the main event. So for me, I'm like, I'm going to do this what I normally do. I don't need to pull out anything special. I wrestle like scouts are there all the time.
Right.
So my opponent, he's kind of like, oh, I got to do this spot. I got to do this. I'm like, no, just do what you usually do. You're going to try and do something you're not accustomed to. Odds are you're going to mess it up.
Right.
So we went in there. I think we had a hell of a match. After the show's done, I see all these guys going up to Pat, one after the other. Hey, did you see my match? Did you see my match? And I said, I don't care. I'm not going to be one of those guys. That's not me. I let my work speak for itself. And I'm not going to lose any sleep at night if he doesn't come and talk to me. I'm not a brown noser, maybe to my detriment, but I don't ever want to be seen as someone who is brown nosing and sucking up to people. I want to earn my spot on merits, not on nepotism. So I said, I'm going to just do my own thing. Show's over. I'm helping put away the ring. And I see all the guys going up to him and everything. And then I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I look over and it's Pat. And he's like, I just wanted to say, you had a really good match out there. I really liked what I saw. And I was taken aback because I'm like, I was so adamant. I'm like, I'm not going to go talk to him. And now he actually came to talk to me.
Right. You weren't chasing a hug like everybody else was.
Yeah. And I appreciated that. And I said to him, thank you, sir. That means a lot to me. It's my dream to wrestle for the WWE. I want to be a WWE superstar. Hell, I want to be WWE champion. And he said, well, you have a lot of talent. I encourage you to send your stuff to WWE. They have tryouts coming up in Florida, in Tampa for FCW. He's like, I encourage you to send your stuff. So that was one thing that happened. Now, prior to that, I almost forgot. Sylvain had put on a show, big show, and he brought in some big name guys. He had I think like Samoa Joe was on the show, Al Snow was on the show, Rob Conway, and he brought in Nova, Mike Bucci, Simon Dean. I happened to be walking out of a dressing room, and he's walking out of a dressing room on the opposite side at the same time. And I'm not in my gear or anything. I'm just, you can see I like to dress up when I'm at a show. I'm a professional. So right. I don't want fans seeing me looking like a fan. And he says to me, you have a really good look. Have you ever tried out with WWE? And I said, no, but it's my dream. It's my goal. It's what I want to do. And he said, before the night is over, get me an 8x10 of you, put all your information on the back. I'll have it in WWE's hand by Monday. This is a Friday we're having the show. I'll have it in their hand by Monday. Wrote down every possible skill, stat, place I've been, anything I could think of, gave it to him. He called me that Monday, said, I sent in your stuff, and I encourage you to follow up with me and to consider doing their tryout. It just so happened that like the weekend after that was the Pat Patterson one. So now it's like the stars are aligning. It's telling me, hey, this is something that you should pursue. When Pat Patterson told me that Sunday on Father's Day, that night, I sent off my application for Florida Championship Wrestling. Got a reply back from them, and they rejected me. I had another conversation with Sylvain. I had another conversation with Nova, and told them about it. I don't know what happened between there and afterwards, but like a day later, I got an application saying I was accepted. So from there, I think it was maybe in a month's time or month and a half's time. It was December of 2009, went down to FCW. We were 70 guys. So there were a handful of Canadians, maybe about a good 10 of us from Canada. Just by comparison, I think there was maybe like 15 from OVW, specifically from OVW. Internationally, there weren't too many, to be honest. There was a guy, I remember him like it was yesterday. There was a guy from France, but he was Brazilian, and he was like, we were calling him Batista because he was just like as big as Batista. I mean, like, man was massive. I don't know what they were feeding him, but I think it was highly chemical and highly anabolic. But all that to say, tryout went fantastic. I often say, I'm like, if I could have done it over today with everything I've learned, I still wouldn't have done it as well. Just the stars aligned for everything, every drill, every match, everything that we did. it was on point. And you'll see when we release the interview I have with Tyson Kidd, he was there as a guest evaluator, and he gave me a 5-star review. Him, Natty, Harry Smith gave me a 5-star review because honestly, the matches everyone was doing, they were just boring matches. It was just the basics. See, some people, they don't have a strong mental constitution, I guess we could say. They get told things, and it's like the Pavlov's dog. It's just they're responding to that right away. So they gave a speech when it started, and they said, you know, you're not going to impress us with any of your high flying, any of your risk taking. We want to see good fundamentals and whatnot. So most people kind of took that as, let's just go in and do the basics. And almost every match was the same. Almost every match started with a lockup. Almost every match was a headlock to a typical international tackle drop down, so on and so forth.
Yep.
You had a heat full of punches and kicks, all these things. And I said, man, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do me because like these matches are boring me. I want to do a match that's going to be what I normally do. And I mean, they chose me to be here. I had to send the matches, the prerequisite. They know what I can do. Why am I going to come here and conform to this in the box basic nothing? So I went in with an opponent from Washington State, who I think by his own admission had 15 matches. In my mind, I'm like, why are you even here if you've only had 15 matches? Never worked as a heel, and they wanted him to be a heel because they were very dead set on me being a babyface. He tells them, this is in front of everybody when they're announcing the match, he tells them, I can't work heel.
Just shoot yourself in the foot, bro. Just pack your bags and go home.
Yeah. So from there, they say to him, well, it's okay. You're going to learn how to work heel. So then they start saying, okay, now the next match is going to be, he interrupts Dr. Tom, and he's like, but I can't work heel. I just can't do it.
Bro, they should have told him to go home right there. Just go, bro, just go home. No problem.
Yeah.
Just sit out. We'll find somebody else.
And so I speak up and I say, hey, I don't mind. I can work heel. I've worked my career 50-50. I've done as many heel matches as face to this day. I've done as many as one and as the other. So they're like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, we're here. We got to prove we got the skills. We got the goods. I went in and did that match. The Hart Dynasty were all there. They loved the match. And I sensed there was a bit of jealousy because the guys were all like, oh, well, you know, why did you get to break all the rules? Why did you get to go in and do like moonsaults and do, you know, all these different things? I'm just like, because you got to understand some rules that they want you to break. You know, it's like they know what I do. Why am I going to go in and be somebody else? I'm going to stay true to me. I got a strong constitution. I got a strong moral compass that points me, you know, in the right direction to just listen to my gut and say, you know, there is such a thing as objective wrestling that will get through to people. And all the comments I got were, you were original. Your look was original. You were entertaining. That's what we are at the end of the day. We're entertainers.
Right.
No one wants to see the basics. If the basics were what was selling, then amateur wrestling would be drawing bigger crowds than us, but that's not the way it is. And from there, it culminated with the last day, and I was killing it in the promos too. I popped everyone with my promo, which everyone kind of just did the generic wrestling promo, the I'm going to beat you up promo. I threw in some funny stuff, and even Dusty told me like, oh, you know, you really brought it in that promo. And I made everybody laugh, which, you know, I was happy with that too. And on the last day, Pat Patterson was there. And he said, well, we don't have a lot of time, but we want to see the best. So they booked 3 matches, which I believe were the 6 best people at that tryout. And unfortunately, I don't remember one of the matches. But I know it involved Rhett Titus, who was in Ring of Honor.
Yep.
He was in one of the matches. Clearly was one of the best people at that tryout in terms of everything, look, personality, all of that.
Yeah, I worked him. He's good.
There was another match that involved, if I'm not mistaken, another guy from here, Alex Silva, who was the first gut check winner for Impact, for TNA. And the last match of that whole tryout camp was me versus Jinder Mahal. That was the final match. What they didn't know was that Jinder and I had wrestled each other probably about 4 or 5 months before that, because he's Canadian. He's from Calgary.
Right.
We were on a show together in Ottawa, Ontario. I had hung out with the guy on a number of occasions. We were familiar with each other in the ring. We had a hell of a match. We went in there. He, you know, put a beating on me. I sold for him, took big bumps. He let me hit him with the 450 at the end for the win. And we had just a fantastic match, he and I, because we trusted each other. We knew each other. He was my friend. And at the end, they were very impressed, and they awarded him a contract after it was all said and done. They told me, you got nothing to worry about. You impressed us all. It's Steve Kern. And I would love to get him in an interview on my show, because Steve Kern praised me. He pulled me aside from everyone. He's shaking hands with people in line. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Okay, Jeremy, I want to talk to you. And he pulls me aside, and he's like, you have nothing to worry about. We loved what you did. You impressed all of us. You were the most prepared person. He said that. Dr. Tom loved me from the start. Said the same stuff. You got a good future here. Norman Smiley said, I was the most prepared guy. And I really believed it was going to lead to something. Lo and behold, May rolls around. This was in December. May rolls around. And I'm at WWE. I made the phone calls myself, because they said, hey, now that you've done this tryout, you guys are first on the list for extra work.
Right.
I called them probably as soon as the show got announced. So 2-month turnaround from, 2 months before the event would take place. They told me, we haven't booked it yet, but call us back in 2 weeks. I called them back literally same time, 2 weeks later. They said, we still haven't booked it. We should have booked it by now, but we haven't. Maybe try us back next week. I tried back next week, and the woman on the phone said, well, we already booked it. And I said, well, I called you guys twice, and you told me to call back. I feel like I was kind of at the front of the line, and I kind of got bumped for other people. Then she said, well, have you tried our website and submitting your information on there? I'm like, I've submitted that since I did Florida back in December. I've had this submitted since like October, September, whenever it was. And I said, on top of it, it feels odd, because they had told us that the ones who did the tryout are going to be the priority for extra work.
Right.
And this is the first show to come to my town or to my country. And I would have thought I would have maybe got a call, but that's why I called you guys. She pauses. It's to the point where I don't know if she's on the line anymore. And I say, excuse me, are you still there? She said, yes. She's like, I'm just looking something up. And then she asks me, do you have any tattoos? And I'm like, no, I don't have any tattoos. And she's like, how tall are you? I'm like, I'm 5'10". And she's like, okay, so be at the arena at this time, have some dress clothes with you, have your wrestling gear, have 3 sets of clothes. And I'm like, that's it? Do I have to call back and confirm? No, you're on the show. I appreciate you being patient and being persistent. We're going to have you on there. Now, I don't know what she checked in those 10 seconds or whatever, but she gave me the go ahead. And I do think that it was an exception, because we were an odd number of people. Also of note, at that same tryout that I did there, Sami Zayn was there. If I'm not mistaken, I think she's now known as the Bunny, Allie.
Yes, from AEW.
She was also at that tryout. Don't think really anyone else of note in the wrestling business. I mean, I remember some people, but some who no longer in the business. But we were a little group of about 7, I think, 7 or 9. It was an odd number, and that was where I had my infamous encounter with John Laurinaitis. Just trying to sell myself, trying to say, hey, I'm not like these guys here. I want to be a part of this company. Why hast thou forsaken me when I've done so well in the tryout? And he and I had it out, but he's a guy who he's got to sift through the trash, because and I recognize that it's like, you get a guy like me come up to you in every town. Maybe the guy can't even run the ropes properly, but he's trying to sell himself. True. You gotta filter out the ones that don't belong from the ones who actually got the goods. And what it came down to is, I said, even though you're telling me, well, if you haven't wrestled in Europe and you haven't wrestled in Japan, how do we know that makes you good? And I'm throwing out answers to the questions, and I'm like, well, this company hires people who've never wrestled before. Why is that a metric for getting hired and whatnot? And I'm just, not to say that I'm confident or I'm braggadocious or whatnot, but I am confident in what I bring to the table, and I'm definitely confident in what I said before. I'm not going to be the worst guy in your roster. So he's throwing me all these questions. He's saying, I look at you and you remind me of Kofi Kingston, as inappropriate as that is to say. But, I roll with it. And he's like, what makes you better than Kofi? And I'm like, well, I'm younger, more athletic, possibly. What's going to happen with Kofi when he's got 360 days on the road and he breaks down? You're going to need someone to take his spot. I'm younger. So yeah, what more do you want me to say? And I had answers to his questions, and I got through to him eventually. And then he said, okay, well, I'm going to talk to the people at FCW. I'm going to see what you're talking about. But if you wasted my time, if you're lying to me, I never want to hear from you again. You're never going to hear from me again. I said, that's fine. Yeah. I'm like, I wouldn't waste your time, but whatever. If I don't end up being up to your expectations, the only person I have to blame is myself, because I've been ready for this, and I'd be a fool if I didn't take this opportunity. So I'll have to live with myself. All you're going to hear from me is, thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. And that's just the way I am. And then, he said, he's like, okay, kid, clearly you got guts. So, we're going to take a look at you. They shot me in some promos. They said my promos were a little over the top. They literally compared it to The Rock. And they said, like, it's kind of like The Rock, in the Attitude Era. Yeah, your promos would have been fantastic. But now we want guys that tell stories. We want guys like The Miz, like CM Punk. They're not over the top. They're telling stories. Along the way, the next day, I end up getting a match on SmackDown, which I still feel is one of the highest points of my career. Worked with Kurt Hawkins and Lance Archer.
Yep, it was a tag match.
Tag match. I think I had a fantastic match with them. And I'm riding high. I'm riding cloud nine. I'm like, I'm really, putting a dent in all this and getting somewhere. But my mistake, I feel, was twofold. I feel that the path of least resistance, when I was talking to John Laurinaitis, would have been to just direct him to Pat Patterson. Because when he said, like, who can vouch for you, I said, talk to your staff at FCW. Pat Patterson was just down the hall, and he had been one of my biggest supporters. Right. He could have easily put in the word for me. So I look back on that with a bit of regret. The other thing was I didn't follow up on it. I've always been someone who does not want to use the path of who you know and connections and those kinds of things. I want to be recognized on my own merit.
Right.
Follow up. I didn't call him. I didn't keep in touch. And like I said, it's a game of who you know. It doesn't matter what you can do if no one knows who you are and you're not fresh in that person's mind. So I feel that was what kind of derailed things there.
One of the things, though, because I watched a lot of videos on you and interviews and watched some matches on you before we sat down and did this interview. I was like, okay, cool. I see you. But now that I'm listening to you, I'm like, I like this guy even more because you fight for what you want. Because closed mouths don't get fed. Don't worry. The other guy that didn't follow up, because I'm sure you probably weren't the only one that called back 3 times in that month, right? But there was one person who called back that last time and they said, yeah, we already booked the show. Okay, no problem. I'll wait until next time because they didn't want to burn any bridges. And you just said, you know what, damn it. If I burn the bridge, I burn the bridge. But you told me to be here, and now I'm here. And because I'm here, I'm asking you to honor your word. I respect you for that 100%. Because I'm 100% honest. If I was in the same situation, I don't think I would have been able to do that because I'd be like, you know what, I got to walk on the eggshells. But F it. Break the eggshells. Break the eggshells. I like that. So, Jeremy, after one of your final WWE extra backstage works, you said that you didn't fit into what WWE is doing and what they're presenting. What about your experience that made you feel like that?
I really felt that the company had gone in a different direction than the last time I was there. I personally thought that the Laurinaitis administration really had things a lot more of what they should be, assessing wrestlers on their talent rather than, bringing in certain wrestlers who may have been privileged to wrestle for better companies and putting them through a series of drills when they already know what they bring to the table. They just want to kind of, see if they have the heart for it. I was lucky with my next set of tryouts was again, just a lot of phone calls, pretty much the same thing. It was a copy and paste of what it was before. They announced the show, this time in my hometown and in Ottawa, which is where I wrestled the first time around. Mm-hmm. And I called them. Same thing. We haven't booked it yet. We're going to, keep you in mind. And so call back in 2 weeks, that kind of thing. In those 2 weeks, I wrestled at the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, which at the time was in Amsterdam, New York.
Yep.
Probably not that far from you. Definitely closer to you than to me. So I was fortunate to know one of the other people booking the show, and they got me a spot on there. I did a tag match. By my own admission, pretty middle of the road of a performance. It was after the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and this is why I put this into context for a lot of people. At that point, this is 2012, I think. So I've been grinding now for 7 years. After the show, we go back to the hotel, and there's all kinds of VIPs there. There's all kinds of important people in the business who are there for the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. I happened to run into Fit Finlay in the hallway, and it was like Mike Bucci all over again. Now, I was on a show with Fit Finlay about a month and a half before that in Barrie, Ontario. Didn't get to say, I think I maybe said hi to him, shook his hand, but he's in the middle of getting changed through the match. Didn't get to spend any kind of time with him. Fast forward a month and a half later, we're at the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, we're at the hotel, and he happens to be walking by, talking to a group of people. I kind of just say hi to him just to, see what's up. It's Fit Finlay. I have respect for him. And I say to him, hey, we were on a show together in Ontario. He's like, yeah, that was in Barrie. I remember you from that show. I'm like, oh, I didn't really get the time to talk to you that much. Like, no. He's like, but I watched that whole show. I watched as I was getting dressed in the back. I was looking through the curtain and I watched your match. And he said, yeah, he's like, I remember you. And he's like, you got a great look. You really got a great look. Have you tried it with WWE? I'm like, yeah, in the past. And I told him my story. I'm like, I thought it was a shoo-in. I thought for sure they were going to take me. It's a case of doing everything right, being told you're doing everything right, and it just doesn't materialize. But again, I'm not a politician. So he says, well, the good news is like I'm going back to WWE. So because he was an agent and he got released. So then he said he's going back, and he's like, we should keep in touch. And he said, like, this is my email, this is my phone number. Shoot me off your information as much of it. Same thing like Nova. Send me as much as you can. I sent it to him. He sent me a text back saying, this is great. I'm going to look into it. We should keep in touch. He went off to Japan. Meanwhile, I'm making the calls to the office and I'm not hearing anything back. Now it's like I'm calling and it's like, yeah, we can't talk to you now. So I wrote a message just out of the blue and I'm like, hey, there's a show coming up in my town. I wouldn't mind getting on as an extra. Is there anything you can do to help me? And it was one of those things where I didn't hear back from him. 2 weeks go by. It's like a Wednesday. It's like middle of the week, and Raw and SmackDown are the next Monday and Tuesday. Call the office, and they say, yeah, we're going to get you on there. No problem. Same thing as usual. Bring dress clothes, bring wrestling gear, all that stuff. He sends me a message back on like the Saturday, and he's like, sorry for responding late. Was really busy. I can get you in. Just show up at the door, and I'll get you in. So I got it on my own. But if I wasn't able to, he would have done it for me.
Right. You had a backup plan.
Yeah. So that was cool because they both kind of came through. Showed up, did that tryout, and it was different. We didn't get to go in the ring the first day. We just sat and listened to William Regal tell us, bring us up to speed about the hiring practices and whatnot. Didn't get to do anything. That was when Jerry Lawler had his heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Was that day. But they were behind schedule, so we didn't even get to go in the ring and anything. The next day, we got to go in the ring and work. And bottom line for what happened with me was that William Regal felt that my footwork wasn't that good, which I was like, okay. And he said to me, he's like, go out and take boxing classes. It's going to help you. Wrestlers, amateur wrestlers, they don't have the right footwork for WWE. We have to correct them a lot. The footwork is more like boxing or like salsa dancing. Right. So it's funny because after that tryout, one of the first things I did, I enrolled myself in boxing because I'm like, I don't want to leave any doubt. You tell me I have a weakness. I don't want to have a weakness in my game. I don't want to have a chink in my armor. So I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to do it. And I did it. And I took boxing for 4 months, didn't rack up an amateur record or anything like that, but mastered the footwork for boxing. Now there's a little bit of competition. Now we're not putting people through, endless CrossFit drills and these kinds of things to see if we can break them, to see, what their skill level or their fitness level is, and those kinds of things. And we're actually looking for star power. Now I'm a little less disgruntled with how business is being done, and I think that it's moving in a better direction. I would still like to see Canada get as much scouting and as much opportunities, but when it comes down to it, I mean, it's really disenchanting when, for example, they did a big tryout. They did a massive 70, 80 person tryout here in Canada, people from all over, put them through the drills, didn't hire a single person. Didn't hire it. And then people online saying, oh, well, we have to get better. We have to improve. I'm like, no, this was a cattle call. This is what they used to do in the Negro leagues in baseball before they integrated players after Jackie Robinson. They would put on a tryout, have a bunch of people just to say, well, we did a tryout. No one was good enough. So that's what I always compare it to with Canada is like, look, maybe it's not going to be me, but I'd love to be the Jackie Robinson of Canada when it comes to wrestling. There's a lot of talk of the term systemic racism. And it's not to say this is a racist thing, but the term that I've coined for this is it's systemic ignorance when it comes to Canadian wrestlers. It's a system that is built to not give an equal opportunity to a Canadian wrestler, knowing there are border restrictions, knowing we can't go to the big name indies to try out and showcase our skills, knowing WWE, these companies don't come to Canada as often. And that's just a fact. We don't have that level playing field. So it's no different than the players from the Negro Leagues. I think that's how a lot of the Canadians in wrestling are kind of seen. It's like, well, you have these exceptions to the rule, but they didn't open the floodgates. We are not integrated into wrestling, and the ones who have made it have been exceptions to the rules, not the rules.
Well, you were talking about, again, how you didn't fit into that. So now the other question is, where do you feel you fit in?
Anywhere. Like literally anywhere else. And it's not to say that I don't fit there. It's to say that I didn't fit then. And who knows what the future, but like anywhere. I think I could have fantastic matches with anyone. I think that when you see my talent, hell, appraise me against anyone. Find me another talent. And I mean this figuratively as much as I mean this literally. Like, find me another talent somewhere that brings everything I bring to the table at the same level. Find someone who talks as good as me. Find someone in as good a shape as me. Find someone who flies as well as me with the intensity and the viciousness that I bring to every match, with the psychology. Find me this person, and you'll be shocked at how few people you can find. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there. You know, I look at guys like AJ Styles, I think is a well-rounded talent. You know, Kurt Angle in his prime, Chris Jericho in his prime. These are guys who could do it all. That's what I model myself after. Find me these people anywhere in the world. Just find them for me. And see how many people you come up with objectively and appraise them against me on all those attributes. You'll see where my place is in wrestling. And that's why it's not a case of, you know, where do you fit? Anywhere. You know, what can't I do? You know, I feel I am a top level talent. I'm not these independent guys who on the weekend put on a facade that they are a professional wrestler and then live their life as someone who is 10% less advanced than the people they perform for in the audience on the independents. That's not me. I'm a professional. Whether I have a big enough stage and a bright enough spotlight to do my craft, I am a professional. I live as a professional. I train as a professional. I diet as one. I study wrestling to keep getting better and not be complacent, because I know the call can come at any time. It can happen for me. It can happen for you. It can happen for any other wrestler out there. It can come at any time. I don't want to be the guy who's caught slipping and I got to catch up. I'm living through a pandemic right now here in Quebec, for example. We're under the strictest lockdown in all of North America. Don't believe me, and I'm not talking to you, but to the people out there in podcast land, don't believe me, Google it, and you'll see. We have gyms that are closed, restaurants are closed. We have a curfew at 8 o'clock. You're out on the street past 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You will be fined up to $6,000.
Wow.
That, for me, that's just a detour. I'm not getting out of shape. I'm training at home. I'm still finding a way to do all these things. I'm still finding a way to live life as a professional. That don't get in my way. And that's my mentality, is I'm not going to let anything stop me from being ready yesterday. No excuses.
What is next for Jeremy Prophet?
Hopefully being that Jackie Robinson. It's what I strive for every day, is to just make this fair for all of us Canadians.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've got not only a man who is passionate about pro wrestling, but he's also passionate about his fellow countrymen. Jeremy, where can everybody find you outside of the Tristen Law Show?
Well, you can see me every Tuesday at 7 on Jofo in the Ring, doing my thing, reporting the great sport of wrestling, having a good time, but also making sure that we bring good, unbiased, intelligent coverage of professional wrestling's ins and outs, fantastic interviews, great analysis. You can find me personally on Twitter at Jeremy Prophet. That's JeremyProphet. Don't confuse it with the Street Profits. That's Prophet, like a prophet in the Bible. You can also find me on Instagram at The Real Jeremy Prophet. And I'm also on Facebook under my real name, under Jeremy Barnoff. You can find me on there. But space is running out on Facebook. I'm about 40 people away from being at the max. So you might want to try my fan page on there. But Twitter is definitely the best bet. Twitter is so amazing for wrestling. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's helping me to keep in touch with a lot of great people. It's how I met you, Tristen. And I feel blessed that I had the opportunity to come on here and that I can now call you a friend. And on the air, off the air, we can talk anytime. And I definitely got to get you on my show on Jofo because I'm just dying to know about your career path. And maybe once we're off the air here and you got some time, we can even talk a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, it was a pleasure to have you again. And I can't wait to talk to you off the air, just like we talked on the air. So ladies and gentlemen, don't you go anywhere. You've heard from Jeremy Prophet himself. I will give you my reaction to this interview and what's happening next week here on the Tristen Law Show. Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. That shirt you're wearing is so not cool. Why don't you head on over to TristenLawShow.com and get yourself a new shirt. Not only will you be cool, but you'll also be supporting the show. What are you waiting for? Go now and get a hat too while you're at it. Thank me later. We're the show at TristenLawShow.com. Welcome back to the Tristen Law Show, and I hope that you're having a great time. We're looking to promote your band or brand here on the Tristen Law Show. Just contact the Tristen Law Show at TristenLawShow.com or send an email, if that's what you do, to TristenLawShow@gmail.com for more info. So what did you think about Jeremy Prophet? I want you to sound off right now on social media. Hey, you can even send me an email. Send an email to TristenLawShow@gmail.com because I'm sure that everybody has a thought about Jeremy Prophet, and there will be the ability, possibly, for your thoughts to be read on future episodes. You got to remember, if you're going to tag me on social media, you got to make sure that your page is not private or restricted. I need to have full access to your page. Do that. But I'll say this, Jeremy is determined, and what he wants, he's going to get, because what he wants is his. His interview was about 105 plus minutes of raw, unedited audio, which was trimmed down to just a little bit over what you heard today. Yes, there's about 45 minutes of audio that hit the cutting room floor that you'll never hear, but maybe you should hear it. I think that you should look out in the future for a special bonus episode, and we're going to call it Jeremy Prophet Uncut. I don't know, Jeremy Prophet Raw on Uncut? I don't know, but keep a lookout for it because talking with Jeremy, there was so much good meat on the bone that I had to trim off for time's sake. Jeremy, my brother, I just want to say, from an American wrestler to a Canadian wrestler, from the country that I live in to the other country that I love, I want to thank you for the time. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I look forward to working with you down the road. I appreciate you, Jeremy, utilizing my platform to get your message across about inequalities surrounding Canadian independent pro wrestlers. And to you listening to my voice right now, I'm talking to the person that's listening to this on the computer or their iPhone or however, Spotify. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you understand what's going on in Canada, because we're going to deep dive into that next week. But before I go into what's happening next time, don't forget, I need your help to vote for the top 5 WrestleManias of the previous decade. Look for the link in the description of this episode and or visit TristenLawShow.com. Go ahead and do it. Next time here in the Tristen Law Show, we're going to dig deeper into Canadians not having equal treatment as it pertains to opportunities like us here in America or other countries at that. Representing the maple leaf, the red and white, representing Putin, and other things Canadian, you're going to meet Alexia Nicole. And that's next time here on the Tristen Law Show. If you like this episode, I need a favor from you. Yes, I am talking to you. Share this on your favorite social media platform and don't forget to tag myself for the show. Don't make this be the thing that you do. Make this be the thing that we do. You can walk up to a random stranger and tell them to listen to the Tristen Law Show. Yeah, they might think you're crazy, but who cares what other people think, right? Fine. If you're worried about being judged, go on over to TristenLawShow.com and at least buy a shirt because people will know that you're really, really cool. Rate the Tristen Law Show 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave a review, please, because reviews mean a lot. Whichever podcast platform you're using to listen, please follow or subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. The best part is that it's all free. Learn about myself and the Tristen Law Show by typing TristenLawShow.com in your internet-enabled device for more info. I've been waiting for you next time. I'm Tristen Law, and you've been listening to the Tristen Law Show. Until next time, adios.